Owning a home used to be the most basic part of the American dream. You work hard, you save up, you buy a house. For most of the 20th century, that worked. Homeownership rates climbed steadily, and a home was the foundation of middle-class wealth. But something broke. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what and why the people who can least afford it are paying the price. The median home price in America today is $420,000. The median household income is $56,000. That means buying a median home requires roughly 7.5 years of the entire household's gross income. Every dollar. No food, no rent, no expenses, just the house. And it keeps getting worse. Let's start with a number that explains everything. The price-to-income ratio. In 1980, the median home cost about 3 times the median annual income. Today, it's 7.5 times. That ratio has more than doubled in 40 years. In 1970, a 30-year-old with a median income could afford a median home in most American cities. Today, that same person is priced out of 80% of the country. To qualify for a $420,000 home with 20% down at today's interest rates, you need a household income of over $100,000. The median household doesn't come close. So how did we get here? It didn't happen overnight. It happened in layers. Layer 1. When the housing market crashed in 2008, home builders went out of business. Workers left the industry, and construction slowed to a crawl. It never fully recovered. By 2020, the United States was already short roughly 3.8 million homes relative to demand. The foundation for a crisis was already in place. And then came COVID. In 2020 and 2021, remote work unleashed a wave of demand that the housing market had never seen. People moved out of cities, bought second homes, and upsized, all at the same time. And the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to near zero. Mortgage rates dropped to historic lows, around 2.7% in late 2020. Buying a home had never been cheaper to finance. The result? Home prices exploded. Between 2020 and 2023, the median home price rose 47%. In just 3 years. 47%. Let that sink in. If you didn't own a home in 2020, that price increase happened to you. Not for you. And then the Fed panicked. To fight inflation, it raised rates faster than it had in decades. Mortgage rates went from 2.7% in 2021 to over 7.5% by late 2023. Here's what that means in dollars. A $400,000 home in 2021 at 3% cost about $1,686 per month. The same home at 7.5% costs $2,797 per month. That's over $1,100 more every single month. For the same house, just because the interest rate changed. Over a 30-year mortgage, that's an extra $400,000 in interest payments. You're paying for the house twice. So prices went up 47%. And then the cost to finance that higher price also went up. It was a double punch that knocked first-time buyers out of the market entirely. First-time buyer share of home purchases dropped from 34% in 2021 to just 24% in 2023, the lowest level ever recorded. The door didn't just get harder to open, it got locked. Now let's talk about who showed up to buy when everyone else was forced out. Institutional investors. Between 2021 and 2023, large corporate landlords and investment firms purchased roughly 500,000 single-family homes across America. Companies like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent weren't buying to live in these homes. They were buying to rent them back to you. In some markets, investors were buying 20% to 30% of all available homes. In Atlanta, Phoenix, and Charlotte, the number went even higher. And here's the part that should make you angry. These investors weren't competing on a level playing field. Many made all-cash offers, closing in days, at or above asking price. The average first-time buyer who needs a mortgage, an inspection, and 45 days to close never had a chance. Once these firms owned the homes, they raised rents aggressively. Invitation Homes raised rents an average of 10% per year between 2020 and 2023. So not only did investors price you out of buying, they also raised the cost of renting the very homes you used to be able to buy. And then there's Airbnb. Between 2015 and 2023, the number of short-term rentals in the United States tripled. In Miami, Nashville, and New Orleans, over 10% of all housing units are now listed as short-term rentals. Every home on Airbnb is a home that isn't available to a family that needs to rent or buy long-term. It's a structural reduction in housing supply. In housing-scarce cities, short-term rentals have been shown to raise local long-term rents by 3% to 7% annually. That compounds year over year. The top 10% of Airbnb hosts control over 40% of all listings. It's not a sharing economy. It's a rental empire. So you have institutional investors on one side, Airbnb landlords on the other, and somewhere in the middle, a 30-year-old with a decent salary and a down payment saved up, completely shut out. Now let's talk about supply. Because the obvious solution to a housing shortage is to build more houses, right? America needs roughly 4.5 million new housing units just to meet existing demand. And construction isn't coming close. In 2023, builders started construction on about 1.4 million units. At that pace, it would take decades to close the gap. And there's a structural reason why builders can't build faster: zoning laws. Over 75% of residential land in American cities is zoned exclusively for single-family homes. No apartment buildings, no townhouses, no duplexes, just one house per lot. Single-family zoning was designed in the 1920s to keep certain people out of certain neighborhoods. It achieved that goal perfectly, and it's still doing it today. If you can only build one unit per lot, and land costs $300,000 in a desirable city, the math doesn't work for affordable housing. You can only build expensive houses. Some cities are trying to fix this. Minneapolis eliminated single-family zoning in 2019. Oregon followed in 2023. But they're the exception, not the rule. And even where zoning has been reformed, neighborhood opposition slows or kills new construction. There's even a name for it: NIMBY, not in my backyard. And the NIMBYs have been winning for 50 years. The result? A housing market where supply is hoarded by people who already own, investors who treat homes as assets, and Airbnb hosts who rent by the night. And anyone who doesn't already own a piece of it is on the outside looking in. Now let's talk about something called the lock-in effect, because it explains why the housing market feels completely frozen. Between 2020 and 2022, millions of Americans refinanced their mortgages at historic lows. The average outstanding mortgage rate in America today is around 3.7%. These homeowners aren't selling. Why would they? If they sell their house, they lose their 3% mortgage. To buy another house, they'd need a new mortgage at 7.5%. On a $400,000 home, that's the difference between $1,686 and $2,797 per month. Nobody voluntarily doubles their housing cost. The result? Housing inventory has fallen to historic lows. In 2023, the number of existing homes for sale dropped to levels not seen since the 1990s. Nobody's selling. Nobody's buying. The market is frozen. And the people who need housing most are stuck outside in the cold. What about renting? If you can't buy, you rent. That's always been the fallback. Except rents aren't a fallback anymore. The national median rent increased 25% between 2021 and 2023. In some cities, it doubled. The average American now spends 30% of their gross income on rent. In New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, that number is closer to 50%. When half your gross income goes to rent, you can't save for a down payment, which means you can never buy, which means you rent forever, which means rents stay high. It's a trap, and tens of millions of Americans are caught in it. Now let's talk about who's actually still buying. Because someone's buying these homes. Cash buyers now make up over 30% of all home purchases in America. And cash buyers are by definition wealthy or institutional. The median age of a first-time homebuyer hit 35 in 2023, up from 29 in the 1980s. And the most common way young people are buying homes today? Help from their parents. Down payment gifts from family have become the new normal, which means homeownership is increasingly becoming an inheritance play. If your parents own a home, you can get on the ladder. If they don't, the odds are stacked against you. This is how wealth inequality compounds across generations. The asset-owning class passes assets to their children. The renting class passes debt and instability. Boomer homeownership rate, 79%. Gen X, 69%. Millennial, 52%. Gen Z, 22%. Each generation is less likely to own a home than the one before. The American dream is becoming an inheritance, not an achievement. The median net worth of a homeowner in America is $396,000. The median net worth of a renter is $10,400. That's a 38-to-1 wealth gap, and it's driven almost entirely by home equity. The longer home ownership is delayed or denied, the wider that gap becomes, and it never closes. So what's being done about it? Some cities are trying rent control. It sounds like a solution, but most economists agree it reduces supply in the long run. The Biden administration proposed a $25,000 down payment assistance program for first-time buyers. It never made it through Congress. Some states are allowing accessory dwelling units, ADUs, to be built without full permits. A step forward, but ADUs are small and expensive to build. A handful of cities are experimenting with social housing, government-owned affordable units. Vienna, Austria has done this for 100 years. America has barely started. Japan kept housing affordable by building aggressively. Tokyo adds more housing units per year than the entire state of California. Their rents are flat. Their prices are stable. Canada didn't. They restricted supply, let foreign investment pour in, and now Toronto and Vancouver have some of the least affordable housing markets in the world. The lesson is clear. If you build enough, prices stabilize. If you don't, they spiral. America chose not to build. The bill is coming due. Let's talk about what this actually means for ordinary Americans. The average 30-year-old today would need to save for 12 years just to accumulate a 20% down payment on a median home, assuming they saved every dollar of disposable income. In San Francisco, that number is over 40 years. In New York, 30 years. In Austin, 15 years. These are not retirement timelines. These are down payment timelines for a starter home. And while they're saving, they're paying rent, which is going up, which makes saving harder, which extends the timeline, which is the trap. Meanwhile, homeowners are sitting on record equity. The total value of home equity held by American homeowners hit $30 trillion in 2023. That's $30 trillion in wealth, locked up in the hands of people who already had it, growing every year, inaccessible to anyone who doesn't already own. The American housing market has become a machine for making the already wealthy wealthier, and everyone else is paying rent. And here's the thing about paying rent forever. You're not building equity. You're building someone else's equity. Every month you rent, your landlord's net worth goes up. Yours doesn't. After 30 years of renting, you have nothing. After 30 years of owning, you have a paid-off house. That's $300,000 to $400,000 in wealth. The difference between a secure retirement and a dependent one. All because of which side of the ownership line you were born on. So yeah, the housing market is working exactly as designed for people who already own. For everyone else, it's a locked door, a rising rent, and a down payment that keeps moving further away. Here's what needs to happen. Build more homes. Reform zoning. Tax vacant properties and short-term rentals. Regulate institutional investor purchases of single-family homes. Some states are starting. California reformed its zoning laws in 2021. Texas is allowing more ADUs. Minnesota eliminated exclusionary zoning statewide. But these are small steps against a decades-long structural problem. The supply gap is 4.5 million homes. We're adding maybe 200,000 units per year above replacement. At that pace, the housing shortage doesn't close for 20 to 30 years. An entire generation will rent their whole lives waiting for a market that never shows up. And here's the quiet cruelty of it. The people hurt most by the housing crisis are also the ones with the least political power. Homeowners vote. Renters don't, at least not in proportion to their numbers. And homeowners have every incentive to vote against new supply. So the political incentives are perfectly aligned to make the problem worse, not better. This is America, a country where the most basic element of middle-class life, owning a home, has been priced out of reach for an entire generation. Not because of a natural disaster, because of zoning laws, investor speculation, short-term rental platforms, and decades of underbuilding. Policy choices, every single one of them. The American dream didn't die in a crash. It got bought out from under you, quietly, one house at a time, by investors who saw an asset, by platforms that found a loophole, by zoning boards that said no to density. and by a system that rewards people who already have wealth for simply having it, while making it harder every year for everyone else to get any. So yeah, consumer confidence is up. The stock market is at an all-time high. Homeowners are sitting on record equity. But 72% of Americans say they can't afford to buy a home right now, the highest level ever recorded. First-time buyers are at a 40-year low. Renters are spending half their income on housing. And the affordable housing waitlist in most major cities is measured in decades. The median home is $420,000. The median income is $56,000. The gap between those two numbers is the American housing crisis. It didn't happen by accident. This is America, a country that turned its most important asset into an investment product and forgot that people need somewhere to live.